Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we got a lot of big conversation. The big discussion that we want to have is how much do we really care about life in this country? We'll have a conversation about an op-ed that makes us think deeply about the value of life. Also, folks, let's talk a little bit about legacy building or lack of responsibility. How one man who has 33 children, how he is moving about and forcing us to have a really deeper conversation about family planning. 33 children, folks. And then later, let's talk about what's going on with D.L. Hughley and comedian Monique. The back and forth, the receipts, all of it, and the impact that it has on comedy. And of course, we got trends posted doing the most. So stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. I hope that you had a great weekend, a long extended weekend for Memorial Day as we celebrate some of our fallen soldiers, the men and women who have given their lives for us to sustain the quality of life here in this country. Folks, I want to just let you know that that we're going to have a great conversation. We got a number of discussions that I want to have around the issues of life in this country. I want to talk a little bit about what's happening with this situation of family planning and so much more. So, of course, as always, as we've been trying to really make sure that the show is, make sure that it has your voice, we're going to include your comments in the discussions as we're having our discussions on air. And so many of you have already been contributing. So we truly appreciate that. Let's keep the conversation going, keep the comments going. But first up, let me just introduce my culture crew today. Always fun, always insightful, always dynamic to have these sisters on. We're joined by culture crew member Lise Winnie, who serves as the host of Millennials Anonymous podcast. And we're also joined by Iman Heath, who is an entrepreneur and an activist that are going to be joining us in a few moments. But first, the first conversation comes around this discussion about what happens next. Now, we understand that there has been 2 mass shootings within a 2-week period. Of course, the racially motivated mass shooting that happened in Buffalo, and then we have the mass shooting that happened in Uvalde, Texas. And it's forcing us to have a different conversation about life in this country. Do we really value life as much as we say we do? Let me bring in my culture crew members, Iman Heath, Lise Winnie, to join us for the conversation. Iman, Lise, thank you so much for joining us. How are you ladies this afternoon?
I'm well.
Awesome. Let's start this conversation off here, ladies, talking about the value of life. There was an op-ed that I read from the New York Times. It was called "The Arrow in America's Heart," and it's asking this question about how much do we value life. And this op-ed had really struck me, Lise, because when we are talking about mass shootings in this country, when we're talking about even COVID, there have been 1 million people that have lost their lives to this pandemic. When we're talking about all of these things, and then we're still talking about abortions, we're still talking about police reform, we're still talking about all of these other calamities, all these other issues. And yet everybody in this country, or I think a lot of people in this country, say, no, America is about preserving life. America is about making sure that the quality of life of any human being is there. But when we see the type of pushback and resistance that we're getting to change police reform, to deal with the issue of COVID, to address the issue of abortion, to address this larger issue of mass shootings and guns in this country, can we truly say, do you think that we are truly about making sure and preserving and valuing life? Where do you stand on that, Lise?
I think that it would be very hard to make that argument for the U.S. that we do value and preserve life. You can just look at the way that we handle things. I think we're almost desensitized to it. Like death is something that we see often, and we do not value life because we're not taught to value life. We're taught that some people's lives mean more than others, and that's just kind of how we see it. And we put monetary value on people. So when you see that, of course, you start to look at life a little bit differently. And the way that we process all of the things that have happened, I don't know if we've actually sat down and actually thought about all the children that were lost in that terrible, mass shooting that just happened, all of the people that were in the grocery store. We've not actually processed this, not to mention that there were 8 other shootings that happened, one in Chicago, like they were all over the place. And we just moved on to the next one. And it's unfortunate that we don't process. And I think that's another reason why we don't value life, because we don't even get a chance to process it before the next one hits.
I think that's an excellent point. And I think that, it speaks to one of the points that that many, mental health professionals and healthcare workers and psychologists and other folks that are making as well. That and Keenan, let's throw this quote up here. This is a quote from this New York Times piece that I thought was very, very interesting. How much do we value life? This is from Rabbi Michelle B. Springer, who serves as the manager of clinical pastoral education at New York Presbyterian Hospital. She said just that very thing, Lise. We can only value life if we are willing to truly grieve, to truly face the reality of suffering. I want folks to kind of understand where we are with this. We can only value life if we are willing to truly grieve, to truly face the reality of suffering. And Iman, I know that one big thing that happens in this country, to Lisa's point, is that we love to act as if things don't impact us. We love to act as if things don't affect us, right? And I'm not talking about small things. I'm talking about big things. Like we can get past it. We're so quick to just kind of move on. We can get past this. We can get past this. That there is something missing from the process if you just move so quickly on to try to get back to it. It's like this, I remember when COVID first hit, everybody was talking about, trying to, we can get back to normal. We can get back to normal. Not really focusing on or taking advantage of the time, the opportunity for us to have some different conversations about healthcare, for us to have a different conversation about personal care. We were so quick to move on. And I think to Rabbi Michelle B. Springer's point, we don't grieve. We don't take the time to just say, you know what, let me slow down. Let me reflect. Let me figure out something that I can learn from this loss of life. What's your take on that?
I think a big part that plays in it is emotional avoidance, if that can be a thing. People want to avoid feeling that sadness or feeling that anger, feeling that hurt, or feeling that betrayal, whatever the case may be, when these mass shootings happen, or something as simple as the divide as far as COVID, and like you said, things going back to normal. It'll never be normal. We will never go back to how things were before COVID. But even when it comes to the value of life, like you said, from seeing police officers now not going in to even rescue children who are being held hostage in a school, seeing that value of how they value the children, if you're supposed to protect and serve, and then how African Americans are handled when it comes to police officers. And there's no, I won't say there's no retaliation, but there's no justice in the situation that happened and occur. So it's really, at this point, it has to be emotional avoidance, because like Lee said, it keeps happening. It happens over and over again. And like both of you guys said, we don't have time to grieve. And again, some people, and I can say I'm one of them, want to avoid it.
And that's a problem. I mean, can we at least say that's a problem, right? Like this culture of, and I think that what you said is right on point, Iman. I think that we're living in a culture where feelings are often presumed as being negative. I mean, when we're talking about it in a relationship context, one of the big things that we all have heard, I don't want to get too close to this person because I don't want to catch
I
feelings.
I don't want to be vulnerable because I don't want to.
I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want. But isn't feelings, Lise? I mean, that's a part of life, right? like we don't want to. We want to say we want to experience life. We want things to, we want to go through this thing called life in a very, very special and unique way. But we don't want any feelings attached to it. I'm just not understanding, Lise.
Right. Yeah, that's insane. It's crazy that we live in a place where we can't feel. It's seen, like you said, like Iman said, it's people don't want to be vulnerable because vulnerable means weakness. And I think that's something that we're taught. Like if you are being emotional, one of the things that comes up for women often is women are too emotional. It's always seen as a very negative thing to show emotion. And you're absolutely right. I think that in this country, we don't want to show weakness. Weakness is emotion. Weakness is crying. Weakness is saying, I'm sad. That is weakness to people. And so I think we do need to change what that means. We've taught our boys forever that if you get hurt, you don't cry. Like that's not what boys do. Boys don't show emotions. And we do need to start to change the culture around what it means to actually feel what you're feeling when we're not only just seeing what happened, at Robb Elementary School. During Memorial Day weekend, we had more than a dozen mass shootings around the nation. It's almost to the point where we do not care anymore about life. And we do need to sit down and we do need to process it. And then we also need to figure out, why do we keep going here? Why is the gun the first thing that we all go to when we have a problem? What is it that we need to do? What is causing this as a nation? And we do have a problem with guns, and we do have a problem with emotion and avoidance of emotion, like Iman said.
When Lisa said that point about,
yeah, go ahead.
When Lisa said that point about going to a gun for the first resolution, the first thing I thought of was to completely end the situation or end whatever turmoil it may be, or to completely be finished with, I guess, that emotion of whatever the thing may be. As far as, children being bullied in school and then they go to school and, take weapons to school. I'm thinking for a gun makes a permanent decision. Once you pull that trigger, it's a permanent decision no matter which way it goes. I think is that part for some people to help with their emotion as far as why we keep resorting to a gun. Even in the Black community amongst each other, why do we keep resorting to a final and permanent decision where it usually does not have to go that way?
And the crazy part about it, and I like that point that you just made, Iman. I think the crazy part about it is it never is a permanent end, right? Like actually it opens up a whole Pandora's box of problems. You can't take someone's life in this country violently without there being some consequences and repercussions.
Correct.
And I'm saying that not just from a legal standpoint, but also from a psychological standpoint as well. I'm saying that human beings, we record every single experience, and we categorize in our minds whether it's a conscious experience that we need to kind of draw from, or a subconscious experience that we're going to draw from sometime in the future. But at the same time, it shapes who we are. It makes us up. You don't take life without there being some consequence in that, even if it's for a quote unquote a good reason, right? And so there's always that. So I never understood the mentality that if I take a gun to school, and this just goes to show you, Lisa and Iman, that a teenager's brain is not fully developed. I don't care if you're 17, 18, you might be 18 in age, you might be 18 where you can purchase a gun, or you can get alcohol in some places or something like that. But your mind is still underdeveloped. And when you make a decision like that and say, oh yeah, this is going to end my problems. Like I don't understand. Like maybe it's Hollywood, maybe it's the video games, somewhere along the line that you know what I mean. There's this belief system that if I resolve this situation violently and I win, that my problem will be solved.
That you don't eliminate the
not
issue.
like,
It only grows. Like you said, when it comes to murder, that is an open case until it's solved. Like it never goes away. Like you said, psychologically, you think of some people, wow, I took a life, and whether you take it as something to be proud of or whether you are remorseful, it still is going to have an effect on you either way. Either you're going to grow
right.
into that person who becomes desensitized, like Lisa said, and you just don't feel it anymore, and it just continues, or you'll go into a spiral of a bunch of emotions that may cause you to go into a depressive state. It may cause other symptoms of other psychological issues that you have now developed. Like it's to eliminate an issue, but it doesn't solve anything at all.
And I agree with that. And at least one of the points that was made in this New York Times piece is this idea of death, right? Like as much as we often talk about how death is imminent, how death is final, we still have this weird fascination with death. Like death doesn't mean that it's final. I don't get it. But I wanted to kind of speak on that point of how we are seeing death right now, because if you're hearing about murder after murder, shooting after shooting, death after death, somewhere along the line, you're going to become more and more desensitized. Somewhere along the line, people's lives are going to be diminished to a number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A data point, right? Instead of being considered, like, that could have been like, in the Buffalo shooting, that could have been somebody's grandmother. That could have been somebody's aunt. You know what I mean? Like, we don't think that deep. We're just like 10 people killed. We talk about Uvalde, 19 students. We don't know these are faceless, nameless numbers that we don't have any connection to. We can't, it's hard to say 9 and 10-year-olds who were in the 4th grade who went to school that morning thinking they were just going to have a fun day at school, not to return home again. That hits different.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if we need to examine our understanding of death. Is that necessary as far as you're concerned?
I think we do need to, more so than death, because I think that goes into the realm of religion, and then you start to kind of go down a pathway, because in a lot of religions we are taught that death is not the end, it is not final. So I don't necessarily want to go down that pathway, but I think when it comes to the short term of what people, like Aman was saying, of it gets rid of my problem, I've proved a point. And we do need to talk about that more and what that actually means. Like you're saying, like we need to say that these were children. They were watching Moana in a classroom. They had just left an honor roll ceremony. This is somebody, these are children that they were actually going to school to learn. This was somebody's brother. There were cousins that were killed in that class that impacted that whole community. So yes, like in Buffalo, that's somebody's mother. That was somebody's uncle. That's somebody's teacher. We just don't look at life like that. And I think we're so caught up in our self-preservation first. Us at all, us at every other cost. And it's something that we've been taught. Now, it is something that is innate to humans. We do want to preserve thyself first. It does not matter what situation you're in. You will try to preserve yourself first. And unfortunately, we saw that play out in a big way in Uvalde, in Robb Elementary School, which is absolutely hideous. But we did see that play out. But that's something that we do need to look at. We need to be able to value everyone else around us. And I think we need to start teaching our children that life is more than just the person. Like they do come with more. They impact the impact of a life. When you look at everyone in your life, even the littlest meeting that you had, they had an impact. And without them, your life could be totally different. And so we do need to start looking at life in that way, that every interaction is meaningful. Every second is meaningful, but we don't live like that. We assume that we have tomorrow. Have you ever been left a meeting with somebody like, oh, I'll see you tomorrow? We take that for granted. And I think in this country and in a lot of other places, we need to start really valuing that in time.
Let me just say this before we take our first pause. It was written in this New York Times piece. It said, quote, in the United States, denial of death has reached an extreme form where many focus on themselves to avoid the fear of death. So we do have this underlying fear of death. Mm-hmm. We do have this underlying fear that this life that we all experiencing at this point will come to some end. So we don't make the connection to other people, that we stay to ourselves, that the idea of loss won't affect us. And it's a very, very interesting space to be in, that because you know things come to an end, you don't open yourself up to new experiences. Or because you know things may come to an end, you don't connect with another human being in a meaningful way. And so as a result of that, we feel like, back to your point, Iman, I can't get hurt. I won't feel the pain of loss, you know? And then there's the other part, which we certainly want to talk about is as much as we say that death is all of those things, and like you said, Lisa, I think that makes an excellent point. On the religious side, the reality is that as much as we want to believe that we are nonviolent people, we consume violence as part of entertainment. That's entertaining. Mm. Seeing stuff blow up, seeing people killed, the whole idea, those things are actually entertainment. So it leads us to think that, are we cultivating, are we grooming these homegrown domestic terrorists? Are we grooming them?
I think in a way we are. Like, even if you go to like Dave and Buster's or any type of game outlet situation, arcade, most of the games that everybody wants to play was has guns in it. You're shooting zombies, people, robots. It's something violent in all the games. Even in Kung Fu Panda, when you chopping away at people, like it's
Kung Fu Panda.
The Kung Fu Panda game, when you slice it,
not Kung Fu Panda.
You cutting the fruits up.
Fruit Ninja.
Yeah.
Yes,
Fruit Ninja.
Fruit Ninja. Yes, with the Kung Fu Panda, it's
right.
It starts as entertainment. Roblox. What else is the children playing? Roblox and something else you build. Fortnite. Like
Fortnite.
It starts little, and
it starts little, and that's the thing.
That
is the thing. It starts off with small increments, small doses, and then it slowly builds itself over time. Look, ladies, I got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's continue the conversation. We're asking the question, how much do we value life in America in light of what we saw in Uvalde, in light of what we saw in Buffalo, in light of everything that's happening, these mountain of calamities, folks? Do we really care about life in this country? Or is it just now we've gotten to this extreme space where a life, it is what it is? We'll have that conversation. And plus, of course, I'm going to bring your comments into the discussion. So stay with us. A lot to come to, a lot to get to in the second 30 of the culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Welcome you to the launch of the Mass Poor People's Low-Wage Assembly and Moral March on Washington, D.C., June 18, 2022.
We are a new, unsettling force, and we are powerful. New, unsettling force, and we are here.
We're rising up to demonstrate the compelling power that we, poor and low-income people, have to reconstruct society from the bottom up.
And we need to do it with the loudest voices possible, the biggest actions possible.
Because we know that there is no scarcity in this land. The only scarcity is the moral will to do what's right.
Hold on, just a little while longer.
We are those with sub-minimum wage jobs who can't afford sky-high rent.
People with disabilities are the fastest growing minority group, It's crazy to me that in 2021, it's still legal for workplaces to pay a sub-minimum wage to people with disabilities.
There are still so much trial and tribulations that we go through as Indigenous people. We can't get a decent wage to sustain ourselves, nor can we get adequate housing.
Veterans across this nation say enough is enough. We can't pat essential workers on the back on one day and then cut their health care the next day.
Health is a political choice.
What more do I need to do to prove that my voice is just as valuable as anyone else's?
There are still forces in denial that would try to slow walk our transition to a clean economy and a just future for us all.
We have an immoral system run by immoral people.
But together we walk and we fight.
It's time for a change. Reconstruyamos esta gran nación.
See, we are people of resilience as we fight these interlocking injustices together.
When we work together, mobilize together, and rise together, we become a voice for the voiceless, and we become an agent of change in a time where great change is needed.
We need the third Reconstruction to ensure that deaf people, people with disabilities, and all people can have the right to live and to thrive.
We know what they are doing, but the question is, what are we going to do? Reconstruction begins when we change our mentality and say it's time for you to get your foot off of my neck.
Justice is coming soon.
Hey, do you believe that of today?
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to the show. Welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been having a different conversation in light of the major two mass shootings that we have experienced over these past couple of weeks. The one, of course, in Buffalo, New York, which was a racially motivated mass shooting, and then this one that we saw in Uvalde, Texas, which was a mass shooting of a young man who simply got bullied and didn't know how to handle it. So therefore, he decided to kill children. Both of these mass shootings, very troubling and disturbing to say the least. But more importantly, it speaks volumes about where we are in this country, about the preservation of life. We're having this conversation with our culture crew members on Tuesdays. Lise Winnie, who is host of Millennial Anonymous podcast, and Iman Heath, who is an entrepreneur and activist. And we're asking the question, how much do we value life in the United States? Do we even value life? And I think, ladies, again, to as we were before the break, one of the things that we were talking about is the fact of death, of having this understanding of death. And to least to your point, you said, of course, it's based upon our religion, our spiritual beliefs, and how we have been groomed to see death. But even in all of those, even though, whether you're talking about Christianity or Islam or Judaism or Buddhism or whatever the case may be, there was, and I think in each religion, there is a quote unquote, a respect for death. That we I think is missing, that in each one of those belief systems, death is part of the duality of life, right? And as a result of that, you honor those who are dead. You honor the dead because you understand that the Creator has power over it all. And at the end of the day, I think it has to speak to that. But what we're seeing now, and this is something that came up in this op-ed from the New York Times called The Arrow to the Heart. what we're seeing now is this fascination, not just with death, but we're just seeing this extreme form of I would guess, for lack of a better word, this love that we have of violence that leads to us to one's untimely demise. And it's sad. It's disturbing. It's something, Lisa and Iman, that I can't wrap my mind around. Like, I'm still trying to figure out, well, what would motivate an 18-year-old to go into a classroom and shut the door and lock it and start shooting and killing children? What would motivate a white teenager to go into a supermarket in a black neighborhood and just say, you know what? I'm just going to do this. This is going to be my way of kicking things off, or this is how I'm going to deal with it. Something is still missing. Like, something is still missing. Like, I don't know whether we don't know how to process what we're feeling. I don't know if it's because of the outside influences. We were talking about Roblox, we were talking about video games and everything, but something still seems to be missing. Like, these teenagers didn't come out of a vacuum. They were cultivated, at least.
Yeah, I will say that I think the video games, I think we do need to ask, is it the chicken or the egg? Are these children gravitating towards these violent video games because there is something going on? Or is the violent video games actually making the children or these teenagers go out and do this? And I think that it's more than just a video game. I think it's more so society and the way society is structured. We've had violence in every nation before video games were even created. And I can guarantee you the violence that some of our grandparents and great-grandparents saw, especially as African-Americans, was way worse than what they're seeing on this video game, because you're seeing a live person being lynched on a tree. So we've had violence forever. But I think that here it's more so the way that we view, and we talk about feelings and emotions. Like, let's talk about the shooter at Uvalde, the Robb Elementary School. He was bullied because of a speech impediment. He was bullied because he wasn't going to graduate. And people started to, what did they do? They started to make nicknames for him. They called him the school shooter. That was his nickname at the Wendy's that he worked at. So I was like, these are like different things that we're seeing about people. They're common traits. One of the things that you'll notice about a lot of mass murderers or serial killers, they're really violent to animals, and it's stuff that we just kind of ignore. So I think being secluded, and they have all of this anger built up and they have no idea how to process it. Now they want to lash out on other people. When you see the racist zealot that killed the 10 people in Buffalo, why did he do it? Because he was angry. This whole replacement theory, because he felt like, I'm not in a place I should be. I am owed this. It's more the ideology, I think, that we need to look at more so than just the video games. I think that's a part of it, but I think it's more the ideology of how we value different lives around us.
Absolutely. Let's jump to get some comments from our watchers, because folks are checking in, and folks share your comments on our YouTube and Facebook page. We would love to hear what you have to say about this issue. Again, we're asking a big question. How much do we value life in the U.S.? Let's go to Belinda. Belinda checked in and said, look, we have lost conflict resolution within the family first, then parents showing positive resolution results are lost these days. Our children don't value their bloodline. Well, I agree with the first part of your statement, Belinda, but that last part I don't agree with. Children are taught to be a certain way. If the parent, and this is my belief, and I could be wrong, so Iman, at least you can definitely debate me. But if the parents don't respect the bloodline, if the parents don't show value about life, then you can't expect the child to just come out of that home, which is the primary source of how a child sees themselves and the world. You expect them at 8, 9, 10 years old to break away from that major family institution, their household, to start thinking differently. Now, I think we're asking too much, Iman, I think we're asking too much from children to say, okay, your parents might be crazy, but why aren't you sane? I think that's too much to ask.
Eventually, we have to get to a point where it's okay. We have to hold them accountable, and of course, bring in accountability. But as far as being younger, it starts at home with that example of the parent. I've seen parents, or people with, well, parents, people with children, but the parent will talk to their parent, the child's grandparent, really disrespectful, tone wrong. You cussing, hollering, and screaming. And it's like, if your child see that you talk to your parent that way, how do you expect them or think they will respect the grandparent as well? There was a recent TikTok or Instagram video of some children putting their hands on their grandmother, according to the caption of the video that was released. And the mother allegedly was who was recording the video of these two kids putting their hands on their grandparent. The fact that you allowed it as a parent will already show these children you don't have to respect. For some children, you don't have to respect adults. That could be the perspective that you're breeding, that you're putting out there. You don't have to respect adults. So I definitely agree with the end of her comment. And again, with you, Farajii, that it depends and starts at home. If the parent is leading a bad example, the child will most likely go that route unless they have someone to deter them from that. But we usually don't have the situations because you cannot. It used to be it takes a village. Now people don't want a village. Don't talk to my child like that. Don't say it to my child. What about their child? Like, that's not the point. It's yours that's causing the havoc.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to Shalinda's comment. Shalinda checked in as well. And folks, keep them coming because I think we need to have a discussion about this. Shalinda said, I believe we're trained to become desensitized to it from violence on TV, music, and games. Yes, I think so. But here's the thing, Shalinda. I also think that we have a choice. Nobody's forcing us to listen to music that talks about killing Black people. I mean, I'm a huge advocate of this. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's forcing us to listen to this.
Right. Yeah, we don't.
Nobody's forcing us. Nobody's forcing us to watch the most violent of TV, whether it's reality shows or whether it's, your favorite cop show. Nobody's forcing us to play violent games. These are choices that we're making from a conditioned mindset where we think that that's entertainment. But if you really think about it, watching people die or consuming music that says that you want to watch the man or the woman, the Black man or the Black woman that's sitting next to you, across from you, that lives next door, that you see every single day, that they are your enemy. I'm going to kill that N-word. I would kill. And I mean, you ride into it. You like, yeah. And this is all you see. You only see Black folks. And nobody's forcing us to take in those messages. We choose to take in those messages. Elise, what's your take?
No, I agree with the fact that, again, I still think it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg. And sometimes you do have a good family and there's some mental health issues at play as well. And I think that when we're looking at and listening to all of this music and we're consuming it, we have to realize that they've been doing this since gladiators. Like, people would come to see people actually die. This is just within human nature that for whatever reason, we like train wrecks. Like, we want to see the most violent thing. It's just something that we have gravitated to. But I think when you're talking about it, we do need to discuss more about feelings. I think when you're talking about the conflict resolution, if you are having conflict resolution, you have to feel feelings. People do not want to do that. People do not want to process that because you will have to sit down and think about it like, hey, maybe I was wrong. And a lot of people don't want to admit when they were actually at fault. So grabbing a gun, a lot of the children, I don't know if they always process that this is final. This will mean that, where they think that, hey, split second, I'm just mad right now. And they don't really process what that actually means.
Absolutely. Let's go to Janelle. Jane, I think it's Jane, or is it Jane L. Fields? I don't always say Janelle, but I think it might be Jane. But Jane, Miss Fields said, when it comes to gun death, these folks don't even seem to care about race because little white boys and girls have been murdered as well. Is it a socioeconomic thing? I don't know. I think that we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we just put it in that context. If we just say it's a socioeconomic thing, and I'm glad that the question was raised, I think that diminishes the impact of this. Just like, it's just like something that comes to my mind when we talked about COVID, right? When we first talked about COVID, we were like, oh, that's white people get that. You know what I mean? And I remember having those conversations like, where did we get white people having COVID? Because people like, oh, black people don't get COVID. There was a rumor.
Mm-hmm.
Black people don't get COVID.
Yeah, Lamont Hill said that. I think he said that on. I don't remember if he was on CNN.
Lamont Hill?
Yeah, I think he said it on CNN.
The scholar and professor.
Yeah. I think he was kind of making. I don't know if it was necessarily like, this is not as big of an issue in the African American community, and then of course
it became a big ass issue in the African.
A huge issue.
Like, I mean, if once you start to, and that's my point is, once you start to politicize national tragedies or these type of situations, it becomes something else. It becomes used not to bring people together. It becomes a way to divide people. For example, death should not be used as a political football. It's crazy. Like, in our neighborhood, in our community, they say the only 2 times that you see black people all together is what? If it's, whether you get married or if you at a funeral. Most of the time it's at a funeral, right? Mm-hmm. So death should bring people closer together. This is one of the few countries where death actually draws people away. It's like, it becomes a political partisan divider between people, which I totally don't understand. But
what I've seen on social media so far right now is the debate between who lives matters the most. When black people were shot in Buffalo in a grocery store, it didn't seem to get as much empathy and people didn't sympathize as much versus with a bunch of children being shot and killed by another minority. That's the going back and forth I've seen so far on social media. And that is the part of what is is dividing us. Some people are saying, it takes the attention off of Black Lives Matter, and it takes attention off of the racial rage that young man had to go on that market and do what he did in a black community. So to try to wage whose or which loss was worse, it's like, how the hell did we get to this point to, the children's life is more, or the black people, it's still a life at the end of the day. It shouldn't matter which stage of life either victim was in.
Right.
And I think but that's a great point, because if we're really going to talk about do you value life, we've got to talk about it. We did that though, like not just us as on this panel or black people or women. I mean, as a nation, we did that, where it was like, okay, they look like me, their lives means more. They don't look like me, so their lives mean less. And we as a nation did that. And that's the problem. When you see somebody being killed, no matter what race, no matter where they come from, we should all be like, this is not good. This is bad. And I think that you bring up a great point. We don't do that. How can you value life when you, like I said, we pick and choose what has value? If this person has a lot of money, it's more valuable. If this person lives over here, it's more valuable. We can't do that.
No, I think that's an excellent point. And I think that's why we are in the situation that we're in. And it's like, people's lives become this point system, right? Like, be like, 10 black people. Oh, y'all lost 10 black people. Let me note that. Oh, 19 children, Latino children. Let me note that. You know what I mean? And it becomes this very, very archaic view of humanity, where who's
suffering more than the other?
Who's suffering more?
Who's suffering more? Yeah.
I mean, I don't, and the crazy part that I don't understand is, like, we're yelling and screaming as if, one, these people are coming back.
Yeah.
Right? We're yelling and screaming as if any of this crap that we're talking about really makes a difference in the big scheme of things. You know what I'm saying? Like, in the big scheme of things, like, you know, everybody's talking about, you know, how the police responded in Texas. Oh, they weren't slow enough and all of that. Yeah, we made a decision. You know what happened at the result of that? Children died. And you can't look at it like it's a football game with a misplay or a bad call. You know what I'm saying? It's not like it's like they are right. There are real consequences. They are very real. Like these are 19 children that will never come back. These are 19 children that were a part of 19, a part of their of 19 different families. Like these families will never be the same again. I can only imagine if I lost my son or daughter goes to school, one of quote unquote wanted to be one of the safest places that a child can go to. Right, the school is supposed to be safe outside of their own home, and they don't come back home from that. I'm not hearing, oh man, we kind of messed up. You think?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like this is with life. You only get one shot. That's it. You only get one shot. And I'm not saying that physically. I'm talking about just in terms of we can play around with this.
Yeah.
Right. But we can play around with this.
You
only get one. But if we play around with this experience that we call life, we play around with it as if you're going to be able to, you know, like, oh, okay, this is not a video game. You don't get 6 and 7 lives.
You don't die, then cash in your good deed coins and issue another life.
You get an issue another. That's it. That's it.
Chuck E. Cheese tokens. It doesn't work that way.
It's not that situation. And I think that to the point that this article made, and it started off the article really, and I didn't say this at the beginning, but the whole idea of the article started based on this Buddhist parable. This Buddhist parable said that a man is shot with a poison arrow. The arrow is piercing his flesh. The man demands answers. What kind of arrow it is, who shot the arrow, all of these other questions miss the point. The Buddhist parables emphasizes that it's not the questions about what kind of arrow this is. It's what is important, pulling out that poison arrow and tending to the wound. See, in America, we in these debates about what kind of gun. When somebody died, how did they die? Or when tragedy, right? When tragedy, when tragedy hit, I need to figure out, get the details of the tragedy. No, the point is, how you going to fix? How you going to remedy this situation? How you going to pull this poisonous arrow out of the heart of this out of the heart of this country? Like that's what it comes down to. I don't care about all of the other questions that you may have. I don't care about who gets the quote unquote the win. I'm just trying to pull the damn arrow out. That's it. Like, we see that this country is in a very, very sick place. How can the country get better? That's it. Because why? I live here. Y'all live here. My children live here. I'm not into, well, no, I'm just going to let the country just go fold up and just rot and just go to hell, man. I don't even care about this country. You may not care about this country, but I do, because guess what? This is my home. I'm not going to, and I could say, oh, we could just get up and go.
Everybody
on,
can.
It's not that simple.
Yeah, everybody can.
It's not that simple. Like, this is home. This is home. So I'm trying to figure out how to pull this poisonous arrow out versus just saying, oh, well, you know, it is what it is. I'm not, no,
We already know the starting, we know the starting point. Everyone knows, you know, America established from violence. America, we already know the story of how the Native Americans were poisoned, and we know how it started. But like you said, Farajii, how to tend to the aftermath. And we can preach, you know, mental health, get a psychiatrist, go speak to a therapist, sit on the couch and talk till your eyes turn red from crying so much. But again, home. What are the values and the morals that you follow that are being taught to these children at home? What kind of leader do you have at home? Do you have a leader at home, or you're just winging it? Some people were babysat and some people were raised. The difference between the two behaviors versus example, someone who was raised off of love or someone who was raised off of survival, you get a result of two different people. So if we can get back to the root of what's happening at home, or what's going on at home, what's wrong at home, then we can start to tend to these wounds rather than, they got shot with a bomb and they got shot with an AK. Oh, well, the bomb was worse. Like, that's not the point. What's the aftermath?
What's the aftermath? And I see people are making statements like, Farajii, this is not our home. This is their house. Let me just clear this up for y'all, man. Let me clear this up. I know nothing else other than the United States of America. My people died here. My people shed their blood for this country. This is my home. And maybe we got to have another discussion about this, least possibly. Maybe that's the problem, that you don't feel like this is your house. I know we were slaves. I know that part of it. I know that history. But at the end of the day, this is our home. As Black people, we built this country. We died for this country. We've added to this country. We made this country the great superpower that it is. Why shouldn't we not take ownership of this country? Oh, because so-and-so was here and I don't care about that. I'm talking about the reality. The reality is Black people are just as much owners of this part of the world than anybody else, if not more so.
That patriotic conversation we had, ever since then, I'll throw myself out there. I've been thinking about that weekly. And recently, when I learned and discovered the things that Black people have made or invented that I had no idea of, first of all, it's going to sound silly, but I'm serious. Macaroni and cheese. I believe it was Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson, one of those, their cook, invented macaroni and cheese in Virginia. Then you have other cultural elements that we established as Blacks here in America. The things that we've done. The toilet paper holder was invented by a Black person, which I had no idea. The mop, the broom, a lot of just household normal things we use every day, we did that. Even some inventions that we weren't able to legally patent back then because it was legal for Black people to own certain things. Like, America is ours. Like, we did this. This is all us. Minorities were here before. Well, we weren't minorities then, but before Columbus came over
European
here.
colonizers.
Yeah, before the colonizers came over here and messed Wakanda up. Okay, before they came over here, we still had certain things established. So this America is ours. If it belongs to no one else, like you said, blood, sweat, and tears, this is ours. It just don't seem to look that way economically. But oh no, this is us.
This is ours. And as we wrap up, some folks will say, well, what about Africa? Africa is ours too.
Yeah, that's.
Look.
We started human rights act. That's us too.
Look, man. Look. Let's stop thinking of ourselves as a national people and start thinking of ourselves as a universal people. You see what I'm saying? Anywhere that your foot touches, any land that you contributed to, and you can go through the history, any land that Black people have contributed, I'm talking about you Black people in terms of the universality of the language, like Black, dark-skinned people. We can be found in pretty much in every part of the world of the the living and the living space of the world. Anywhere, that's our home. That's our home. My people aren't just from Africa. They're from the Caribbean. They got Black people in Europe. They got Black people in Australia. They got Black people in Canada. They're Black people in South America. I mean, come on, man. Dark-skinned people. So and I think that, to very quickly, Lisa, if we see that if we started to change our thinking to say, you know what, this is my home, then I think that we will have a greater interest and a greater desire to want to do more for our home. But if nothing else, we have generations coming up behind us that don't deserve the burden of what we are placing on them by staying quiet and staying silent and staying inactive. That is a disgrace. And that's the big thing. Lisa, I'm gonna give you a final word on that.
Yeah, and I agree. I think Black people look at the United States like a rental. Like it's like, I live here, but I own it.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, you still are here, though. So we can't allow everything.
And you were born here,
right? Like we had before. We own this land just as much as anyone else. This land is not more white. Matter of fact, like you said, this was not their land. So, we all going back where we came from, except for the Native Americans. But what I'm saying, or the indigenous people, let me say it correctly. But here's the thing. I think that at this point, we do need to do something where we value life in this country, no matter what it looks like, because if you can't place a value on this one and not that one and say you value life. So you have to value all life. And then you have to understand that we're here. Everybody doesn't have the privilege just to up and leave. That's what the elites do. They can just go wherever they want. If things get bad, I'm going over here. We have the right, for our own people to make sure that they are also well. And if that means that they don't need to be terrorized in their own communities by us, we need to make sure that even though we don't own this, or you don't think we own it, even though we do, we have just as much right to this land. We've got to make sure that we protect them too. We cannot just leave them out here because you're saying we should up and leave unless we're going to put together a pool and move everybody to Africa. Like when y'all saw where to go fund me at? Where's that?
Plane tickets high as hell.
Where's that?
We putting something on the ticket.
I mean, we try to make light of it, but we moving 30 to 40 million people to another continent.
Yeah.
And let's stop acting as if we so brand new. We are so entrenched into this system of things in this country that if we went to another country, some of us would not be able to function because it's just not, quote unquote, a part of the American way. But we have a responsibility, and I think more importantly, we have a power to redefine our existence in this country. If you travel across America, and I'm just saying from a topographical context, if you travel across this country, this is one of the most beautiful countries that you ever see, where you have mountains in one area, valleys in another area, plains. You have so much natural beauty pretty much within a very, very small space. I'm taking ownership of this, man.
Yeah, and Africa,
and I'm not. This ain't a rental. This ain't a rental. My people signed the lease to this joint.
I got the title for this.
We got the title.
We rented to own it, but we own it.
We owning this joint now. Yeah, y'all brought us over to rent this joint. Now we gonna own this joint. I ain't moving. I'm no. This either we gonna make this better for black and brown and for oppressed people. Or we figure out something else, but we ain't at the something. We're almost there, but I have hope in us, and I have hope that we can turn these things around. But I'm not jumping out, folks. We got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about something that I think that is very important, which is family planning. Let's have a conversation about one man, 33 children, and the idea of legacy or lack of responsibility. We'll have that conversation. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to the second hour of the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Powerful first hour. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, let's make sure y'all take a listen as we ask the question, how much do we value life in the United States? Big conversation. And we'll continue to add to this conversation because I feel like we just hit the tip of the iceberg. But as we talk about life, let's certainly talk about family. Family planning is something that is what some would say is a lost science within various communities, including the Black community. And so today we wanted to have a discussion about family planning, legacy building, and taking responsibility in light of a story about one man whose name is Demond George. He is 34 years old, folks, and I'm not making up the details of this. Mr. George here has apparently claimed that he himself is the father of 33 children. Take a look at this. How did this come into everybody's landscape? Well, he posted a picture on his Facebook page. Take a look. Father of 33. The picture, of course, of a man sitting with 33 children or 20-something children. He said 9 of them were missing from the photo. So 24 children were sitting with him. And he posted on his Facebook page, the legend, the legacy will live forever. Now, since he posted it on his page, folks, it has not been a pretty conversation. So many people have called Demond George irresponsible. They said that he was nasty and much more in other disparaging words about his family life. Here to give us some insight into understanding the dynamics of this and how does this one situation possibly play into so many other situations of domestic life that we see in the Black community is Dr. Jacqueline Holland. Dr. Holland serves as the chair for the Family and Consumer Science Department at Morgan State University. And she's been studying family dynamics for many years, and we wanted to bring her into this discussion. Dr. Holland, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this afternoon?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. What an interesting story, right?
Very, very, very interesting. And in a few moments, I'm going to bring back my culture crew members, Lise Winnie and Iman Heath. But first and foremost, Dr. Holland, I want to share with you because Mr. George has been under a lot of scrutiny. People have really gotten upset with him. First and foremost, I'm trying to understand. I've never heard a story like this. And some people have tried to say, hey, this is a part of, that Black African tradition. Some people have went as far as to say, he's a king, so he has the power to share, to sow his seeds and all of those things. But then there's another part of me that is saying this might be very irresponsible because there's no way that one man can be in the lives of 33 children in a meaningful way. do you look at a situation like this?
Yeah, and I think it depends on the culture. Like I've traveled to many African countries and I've met individuals where in the village there was a dad who had several wives, but they were all there in community helping, to raise the children. But of course, the father was not there as we think of how a dad should be. I mean, he's divided, right?
Mm-hmm.
He can't be everywhere at one time. And I think as we read some of the religious scriptures, like in the Bible, we see evidence of, wealthy people. Think of David and Solomon, who had many wives and many children, but there's no way. We see the lack of character also in the children because they had so many and they were not able to really develop them, spend time with them, to create. And when you mention the word legacy, I think it's interesting. Legacy is what we leave behind, right? It's not always money. It could be character. Like if you're a generous person, maybe that's the legacy you leave your children. Boy, dad was generous. I appreciate that. And I'm also generous. But if you also have a legacy of how you treat people, like if you were an abuser, you weren't around, you were derelict of your duties, that's something that can follow children as well. Either a child will say, I am not going to be like my mom and dad and do that, or, hey, my mom and dad did it. I guess it's okay. I'm going to follow that as well. Right. And so I think those are things that we need to think about, like just to make the statement, hey, I have 33 kids. Look at what I'm doing. I agree with you. I think it's very irresponsible. When you think of all that's involved in raising a child, it's not just, throwing out your seed per se, right? But when that seed germinates, how do you care for it to maturity? So that it ends well, it looks well, it acts well, it makes great decisions. How do you do that when you have 33 and you can't, with different moms, and you can't be there all the time? Because I think, didn't it say that he was a truck driver?
He was and I'm not even trying to throw shade on the brother. I'm sorry. This is he said this himself. He said, let me make sure I get this quote because I was blown away by this. He said that he is a truck driver, and he said that the women that he ended up having children with knew that he was broke. So, and I'm reason that I wanted to have this conversation, especially with a voice and expert on this like yourself, Dr. Hollett, is because we are living in a time where I think that many people are questioning the value systems of, a family life, right? Like whether you really do need a mom or a dad in the household to raise good quality, to raise good children. Whether you need a dad present, what is the role of the father? What's the role of the mother? And all of the there are people. We're living in a culture where there are a lot of questions about these things. But when he said that, I'm a truck driver, these women knew that I wasn't, that he said they knew he was broke. Even though, despite flaunting 20 grand cash in the video and having 4 bank accounts, it's just I'm concerned with Black men who see this and then say, you know what, that's okay. So there are women that will allow me to go out there, do what I do, to repopulate, plant my soil, my royal oats, however you want to call it, and then I don't necessarily have to take full responsibility for them other than just in genetics and just very little. Like it's like, the lessons that to be learned from a situation like this can be very confusing, especially if you are always teaching that men should be responsible, men should be present, men should be financially stable for the household. if you're not financially stable, that you're at least working to get to be in a financially stable place to sustain and support your family. All of those ideas and those values are not applicable in this situation.
Right. And then the other side of that is you've had his partners, right, who have enabled him to have this mindset, because all of them were willing participants. And so we have to look at them like, what is their issue? What happened to them at a young age? Is this what they saw? Because oftentimes we become like those who we see, who we live with. How do you know how to parent? You parent like you were parented. And if there was abuse or something there, that's how the cycle is broken. And we teach a course here at Morgan called Marriage and Family Relations. And I love that class because it talks about like the whole family and how you raise children, how you have conversation, interpersonal relations. And what I love about it is that as the students go through it and we have these discussions, I say to them, you're fortunate because now you know how to break the cycle. If something negative happened in your life, now you know what's right and how to move forward. And it only takes one to break the cycle. And then we change the narrative, right? So, I just think about these young men, his sons, like, what are they seeing? What's going into them? Will they do I'm going to be just like my dad. Hey, my dad thought it was okay. And we know from our history that we've had periods in our history where women were beaten up by men, within the home. And it was like, oh, it's okay. But we know it's not okay. But it's not until you get out and learn how you should be treated, then you're like, okay, I'm not going to allow this person to do this to me anymore. I have the power to make a different choice. I don't want my children to continue this generational whatever, practice. I want them. And then I think about his daughters, right? Because
he got a lot of them too, Doc.
He has a lot of them.
He got a lot of girls in his pictures.
Yeah. And so what does that say to his daughters, right? It's okay for me to have relationships with a man and they not be, do their part. I have to take care of the children. And, I go back to this whole thing again about our parents. So we know Billie Holiday, if you've ever seen that movie, I think it's The Government Against Billie Holiday or whatever, who's from Baltimore, right?
Right.
But as a young girl, she saw her mom being abused. She saw her mom being a prostitute and her mother pretty much, and she saw her mom being abused by men, like physically. So growing up, and as she becomes an adult, guess what? She's abused by men physically because she thinks that's how it's supposed to be. But what if her mom had said, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to expose my daughter to this. I think Billie Holiday would have been different. She's phenomenal, gifted, talented, woman, but she died young. She could have lived much longer. But it was that model that she saw that kind of like said to her, it must be okay. I see him beating my mom. My dad has left me. And so, hey, this is a life I know, and this is how I'm going to live it.
Let's bring my culture crew back into this conversation. Two dynamic women on this. Iman Heath, who is an entrepreneur and activist. Lise Winnie, who is the host of Millennials Anonymous podcast. I don't even know where to start with this because as I'm Dr. Holland, I'm gonna be on, and you know what? As much as some people, it's easy to make judgments, right? Yeah. It's easy to be like, oh my gosh, he's crazy, or you might be on the other side, be like, well, that's what men do. That's what we're supposed to do. Be king, boom, boom, boom. It's easy to make those type of judgments, but this is indicative of a very real problem. The fact that you said something, Doc, that I am truly, truly happy that you mentioned, which is that you have a class in college at a HBCU that teaches about the science of marriage, that teaches about the science of relationships. And that is, and I've been taught, Dr. Holland, that is one of the lost sciences, the science of mating. We in the Black community, at one point, we used to know how to pick our mate when we lay down with someone, especially having a child with someone. Now, that's not the case. So to be taught that in the college setting, to say, no, marriage ain't just about love and all these good feelings. Like this is a science.
Yeah.
To drive it home to people, to young men and young women, you have to make these decisions and take them seriously, because they can literally affect the rest of your life. I love that. I just wanted to say that to you, that I appreciate having those conversations, because I don't think we even have those. We don't have those discussions in the house.
Yeah.
We don't have those discussions in the house. Lisa, what's your take on Iman?
I mean, well, this is a quite interesting story, but like you said, it's not unusual. I mean, to have that many children, maybe, but we've seen this happen where you have multiple, like even with Nick Cannon, that started a whole conversation. I think he has like 8 children with 9, like another one on the way, and different mothers everywhere. And so we've had this conversation before. So I think it does bring into the account that I think what a lot of people aren't talking about is, if you have any type of genetic issue and you're passing this down to all of these different people, that's something that we also have to think about. And where do they live? Do they live in a small town where you perhaps could mate with your brother or sister and not really know, because you're not as close to them if you see them only once a year or once every couple years? Like that's a lot that goes into this that I think that people don't always think about when they have so many children, and how they're actually going to be able to care for them as well, which is something that I don't think a lot of people think about.
Hey, Lise, do you think that Mr. George, in this case, do you think that he was motivated by pleasure, or do you think he's motivated by some ideology, some philosophy of his quote unquote his manhood that forced him, that put him in a place where he said, you know what, I'm gonna have, like, what do you think his motivation was?
I mean, I can't speak for him, but it could be a little bit of both. The ideology or the thought of getting a woman pregnant might be pleasing to him, arousing to him. I don't know. Like, there's so many different reasons and why people feel the way that they do in certain fantasies. So it's possible that he was thinking about his legacy when he did that, or it's possible maybe he just wanted to be pleased, and this was the excuse that he gave when people asked, why do you have so many children? Which is interesting.
And what about the women?
Yeah, and they're just left out to dry, and then accepting
well, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, and that's the other part, Iman, if I'm not mistaken, I believe there are 9 mothers. 9 mothers. He said it in his Facebook book. He kind of like tagged them and shouted them out in his Facebook book. And I'm saying, and I'm asking this question with all due seriousness: what is a woman thinking when she comes in contact with a man? Either she's not asking him the right questions about his family life, his past. Something is inherently wrong. But what is a woman thinking when she gets to lay down with a man that he said, yeah, baby, you know, I got like 22 children.
I would,
and I'm not saying that that's the way you think, Iman. Don't
right.
But I'm just trying to understand from a woman's perspective.
From my perspective, I'll say from what I have seen within my community of people is women chase this feeling of having a man. It's a feeling of just having a man there, or having a man that can do something for you, or you may think because he has all these children, and if he plays the paint the picture that he provides for all of these children, if he has 22 children, he has to have some type of money. He has that type of stability for him to have all of these children. And
he's a truck driver. And let's keep it real. You can make 6 figures as a truck driver.
You can, and
you can make 6 figures as a truck driver
for that woman.
But you on the road.
Money. Yeah, you're on the road. You won't be there to take care of those 22 children. You don't have the time to take care of those 22 children. So maybe for a woman, it's just to have somebody there. I honestly don't know. I can't imagine dating someone that has more than 5, and that's pushing it. So
But I think Iman is onto something. I think it's pick me culture. It's like I'm desirable. Like somebody wants me. And it makes them feel good because somebody wanted them. And they're not thinking that, I'm going to have this baby and he's going to leave me. And then a lot of women I can change him. He left them, but I can change him. He's going to stay with me. And they have this thought process and it doesn't work out like that. But I think a lot of it is just to be desired, to be desirable.
Yeah.
And Holland.
So,
I was going to say, going back to me in my, as I've lived and, worked with all kinds of people, it's something that happens to that child. Okay, you look at an adult, right? But what, like Farajii, what was 5-year-old Farajii? What happened to him? Or 11-year-old? What did he see or what experience that he believes this, right? So even for those women, what did they see? Did they see their mom abandoned? Did they see their mom doing that? Because in my head, there had to be a role model. There had to be a model for them to say, this is okay for me to do it. I did some research because I was looking at how much does it cost, to raise a child a year. This is from USDA, $272,000 from 0 to 18. You multiply that by 23, that's $144 million.
Wow.
To raise.
And that's just 23.
I did 23. I thought it was 23, 33. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go back to it. He a truck driver. You're not, and I mean, I'm being of all due seriousness, Dr. Holland, Iman, at least. Like he is not going to be able to financially take care of these children. We know that. So the mother, that burden is going to once again fall on the shoulders of a black woman.
Or
we
us,
understand that.
Taxpayers, the mothers and taxpayers. Yes.
Because see, if one of the 9 mothers or one of the ladies, one of the sisters say, you know what, I can't handle this, let the government take care of it. Are we allowed? You know what? Let me stop this. Let me before we get into this part of the conversation.
My question was going in that direction. Go ahead, Farajii.
Because now watch how the conversation changes when we have to pick up the pieces for somebody's decision. Whether you think it is an honorable decision or a reckless decision, we're paying for that. And that is the hard part. It's like, okay, I can pay. I get it. 1 or 2 children, 3, 5, 6. I know people that had 8 or 9. Nick Cannon can afford that because he's, that's the type of work he's doing. But if you got 33, and I don't know, Dr. Holland, if this is a word, if this is like structural family abuse, even though his hands are not being put on him, even though he's not saying disparaging words to him, but you brought a child into a circumstance that you can't sustain. Therefore, you make them vulnerable. I'm getting upset. I gotta take me a break. I'm getting upset. I'm gonna take me a quick pause. When we come back, we're gonna get more conversation. Get your comments on it. Stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Welcome you to the launch of the Mass Poor People's Low-Wage Assembly and Moral March on Washington, D.C., June 18, 2022.
We are a new unsettling force, and we are powerful. A new unsettling force, and we are here.
We're rising up to demonstrate the compelling power that we, poor and low-income people, have to reconstruct society from the bottom up.
And we need to do it with the loudest voices possible, the biggest actions possible.
Because we know that there is no scarcity in this land. The only scarcity is the moral will to do what's right.
Hold on, just a little while longer.
We are those with sub-minimum wage jobs who can't afford sky-high rent.
People with disabilities are the fastest growing minority group.
It's crazy to me that in 2021, it's still legal for workplaces to pay a sub-minimum wage to people with disabilities.
There is still so much trial and tribulations that we go through as Indigenous people. We can't get a decent wage to sustain ourselves, nor can we get adequate housing.
Veterans across this nation say enough is enough. We can't pat essential workers on the back on one day and then cut their health care the next day.
Health is a political choice.
What more do I need to do to prove that my voice is just as valuable as anyone else's?
There are still forces in denial that would try to slow walk our transition to a clean economy and a just future for us all.
We have an immoral system run by immoral people.
But together we walk, and we walk and we fight.
It's time for a change. Reconstruyamos esta gran nación.
See, we are people of resilience as we fight these interlocking injustices together.
When we work together, mobilize together, and rise together, we become a voice for the voiceless, and we become an agent of change in a time where great change is needed.
We need the third reconstruction to ensure that deaf people, people with disabilities, and all people can have the right to live and to thrive.
We know what they are doing, but the question is, what are we going to do? Reconstruction begins when we change our mentality and say it's time for you to get your foot off of my neck.
Justice is coming soon. Hey, do you believe that of today?
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about the story of a black man by the name of Damon George, a 34-year-old who is the father of 33 children, folks. He's not running away from it. He's not hiding. He is claiming 33 children. Keenan, let's show that this is just some of them. Look at the little girls here. I want y'all to really look at this. Look at the faces. And he posted this picture on his Facebook page, folks. And just look at the precious little girls here and the little boys. Now, he said, even in this picture, there are 9 children that are missing that couldn't make the photo shoot, that couldn't make the family gathering. This man has 33 children. He himself has said that he was broke, even though he has a job, he has 4 bank accounts, but it opens up the conversation about family planning, and it opens up the discussion about whether this is legacy building or lack of responsibility. We've been having a dynamic conversation with the chair of Family and Consumer Science Department at Morgan State University, Dr. Jacqueline Holland, along with our culture crew members, Lisa Winnie and Iman Heath. I think the big thing, I had to calm down. I really had to calm down, Doc, because that level, and I spoke about, I don't know if there's anything like structural family abuse, where again, you're not hitting on your children. You're not emotionally abusing them, but by them coming into a circumstance that they can't get the full benefit of your presence, by them coming into a circumstance where they can't get the full financial support that you need just to be there, just being a good father. I mean, can that be seen as some level of neglect, abuse? Can we see that, or am I going too far in thinking that, Doc?
Oh, I'd say that's definitely neglect. Child abuse is not always physical, right? It's also emotional as well. And yeah, like mom and dad need to be there. Now, there's some situations where that doesn't happen and people choose to adopt, single mom, single dad, but in a responsive way. And I think that's what we're kind of getting around. That's what we're talking about. To me, it's responsibility. How can you really be responsible in a good way? Because it's not just, as I said, not just having the seed, but being there to see the seed develop, being there when there's tears, when, they've been abused by a man, like you, Farajii, you have a daughter, you would not tolerate that. You would have a conversation with her, right? And often, some of my friends, and I say this to my nephew too, and his wife, they both have a boy and a girl. And I said, Jeff, you need to date your daughter so that she knows how she should be treated by a man. And Ashley, you should date your son so that he knows how to treat a woman, right? And we've gotten away from that. And our children don't know. So therefore, they accept anything. And I go back to these women, or to the man, like what was the model that was in their life that led them to make these kind of decisions that they're now impacting another generation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lisa, you got a question?
I do. So Dr. Holland, I know we're talking about traditional families, but isn't there a way, or is there a way to take a blended family, because basically that's what this would be, and still raise really healthy, strong relationships or children that have good character?
Right. But I think with the gentleman that we're talking about, is he there? Yeah, for sure, blended families, definitely. But you still need that commitment, of both parties being there. And not just monetary, but emotional, to talk to see how they relate to each other, as a married couple. And I don't think those children will see that.
And that's the other point about this too, Dr. Holland. He's not committed, and I'm saying in the institution of marriage, he's not committed to any one of the women that have that bear his children. So talk to us about, which possibly is going on there. He's had these children with these different women. He's not married to them. He's not committing himself to them. So he's just out there as a man, as a sperm donor. Right. But it's like it gets to be very, very messy. And if he was married to any one of his mothers, I would be like, okay, all right, there's some structure coming into play. But because he's not married, it speaks about whether this is the ego thing or whether, you know what I mean? Like, is there something underneath? Is there some crazy ideology that he may be, that he may have about himself and about his worth and about his seed and all of those things? Because you're not committed. You're not committed.
And that's why I was saying before, when I think you had mentioned this as well, we look at this man who's an adult, but what happened before this time that led him to have this philosophy, and that's what we need to go back and understand. Like, I would love to have a conversation, not condoning or not getting on him, but trying to understand, help me to understand what happened to you as a child that you feel like this is what you would like. This is the legacy that you would like to leave, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Were there friends? Is this typical for many of your uncles or in the neighborhood that you grew up, your community? That's what I would love to, because we are products of our environment, our families and all of that. And I like what you said before. You didn't want to judge, but help me to understand. I may not agree with you, but help me to understand why you feel this way.
Yeah, and I think and I think that we're at a cultural point, Dr. Holland, Iman, and Lise, where and they in this article about Mr. George, they had quoted a Twitter user, and this Twitter user said, quote, "That's why kings had multiple wives. Man's seed was to spread, and that statistic tells that this year alone was the lowest birth rate in a generation. So kudos to him and Nick, which is Nick Cannon, for repopulating the earth."
Who said that and why?
This is a Twitter user who read about the story, and he reposted the story and added his own view of it. And what I'm trying to get to is we're getting into a very interesting space, I think, about Black manhood and womanhood, especially Dr. Holland, where, of course, as Black men, we see a lot of brothers calling each other kings. Yeah, king, yeah, king, yeah, soldier. We using that term now, right? And now it's like the terminology that we're using opens the door for this idea, well, if I'm a king, therefore I can do whatever I want without any repercussions, no consequences. If I'm a king, nobody needs to hold me accountable. If I'm a king, I can plant my seed anywhere. And therefore I'm building my kingdom. And it's like, how do we make sure that we don't fall into that space where we in our redefining ourselves, that we don't lose contact with the importance of responsibility, the importance of being a stable person in the larger system of family and community. How do we reconcile that?
Are you asking me?
Yes,
or
ma'am.
Anybody? It's open to anyone.
I can start with you. With you, Doc.
And it goes. I think we need to be teachers, and I go back to the whole thing about be fruitful and multiply. First of all, that was said to Adam and Eve when there were no people, right? but the two of them. And so people take things out of context. But then I also think that there's a place for the elders in our community, to teach the younger ones and to be that role model that they can show that what it should look like. And then if it's not there, I wish, always said, I wish everyone had to take a course on parenting, right? Like when you get pregnant and you know that you're going to deliver, you're going to be a parent, it should be mandatory. I mean, you have to have a license to drive, right? You have to have a license to practice law or to be a doctor. Why isn't it that no one has a requirement to be a parent, right? It happens so easily, but no one
so easily, Doc, so easily,
right? Right. And it's not that much to just have a course, just some basic things, about parenting and engaging and like the interpersonal relationships and things like that. And it would be so easy to do. I keep saying, if I were president, whatever, in Congress.
But why?
That's the missing link. We need education. People need to be educated on that.
And so, I mean, why do we push back on that? Because I'm a huge advocate. If we had, and like I said, going back to the point that I made earlier about, having these conversations in a college setting, hell, we might even need to have it in a high school setting, right? Mm-hmm. And then, by the time they get to college, there's some new stuff that's added. But it seems like people want to assume, like everybody assumes that they are all right. Mm-hmm. Right. And I've came to and I think Lisa and Iman, y'all will probably, I've came to the realization as I've gotten older, I'm not all right. I'm you know, there's some things I really need to have worked on with me, right? And even in my parenting, my wife and I, we talk about it often. You know, we kind of do like this scorecard for the day to figure out, did I make the right decision? Did I handle that moment correctly? You know what I'm saying? Because I know that we're not all right. And I hate to come across parents that act like they got it in the bag. Like, oh, I know exactly what to do in a situation. And then when you hear it, you're like, oh my God, I am so sorry for your child.
Yeah. And see, the beauty of that is that you and your wife are partnering, right? Like you're having a conversation because she may say, well, you know, babe, I think you were too hard on them. Like, you know,
right.
You can bounce things off of each other. You kind of balance in that way. But like these women who have these children, who do they have to balance that off with? Who do they have to share some of that pressure? Because parenting is difficult. It's not for wimps, right? I mean, it's hard work. And that's why, to me, I think, why don't we require just a basic class so people go in knowing, you know, what to expect, and not to expect them to be all of this when they're not there yet, physically, emotionally, you know, cognitively.
Iman, you are so quiet. I could tell you don't have no children yet.
I've been fortunate enough to be able to be a witness. So I have been, and all I can say is I agree. Like I couldn't imagine having a child right now. Like not at this time. But for Dr. Holland, just a quick question: what do you think is causing this push or narrative that Black women, we don't need men? I hear particularly from Black women that I don't need a man for this, I need a man for that. And you talked about the science of mating. No one thinks about that. So what do you think is pushing this narrative that, or what's pushing it psychologically in us, this narrative that I don't need a Black man, I don't need a man, I don't need a man?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't really know. Part of me, and I think about our history, right? Generations of being enslaved. And some of what we believe now is because of what was deposited into us, you know, during that time of separating families, you know, selling off the dad, you know, even into the 60s, and, you know, making it easier for the woman to get welfare when the husband is not there. You know, it's some of that I think is generational, and that we don't even understand why we're saying that. Some I think is what we grew up with, because I grew up in a single home. You know, my mom would say, you know, all men are dogs. And I was thinking, all men? You know, but that was her perspective because of the way she was treated, because of decisions that were made and that were regretted. And now here I am, right? And I wonder, like, even with these women, will they be that way? Well, at some point, and then their children will see that, and what will they do about that? And then I believe too that some of these children will not respect their dad because he wasn't there.
And that just adds to the cycle that we're trying to break out of. More children, you know, resenting their father, more children possibly resenting their mother for laying down with the man without making, you know, without thinking the decision through. And that's the heartbreaking part for me, Dr. Holland. The heartbreaking part is when these children get to an age, and it looks like, Akina, show that picture one more time. I mean, he has a number of other pictures, but show this picture one more time, brother. Like, I'm looking at the brother on the end. He looks like he's about 14, 15 years old, right? And
he's tired of babysitting. He is fed up.
Right. You know, he got that look on his face like, man, I don't want to be here. My dad is out here. And I mean, I know that around 14, 15 years old, Dr. Holland, I became so critical of my dad and his decision making, right? And I remember telling myself when him and I would have arguments or disagreements, I would say, I didn't say this to him, I didn't say that to him. I would say it to myself. I ain't making decisions like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I love my dad. My dad is still around, thank God, and he's about to turn 75. I love my dad.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that it was around when I was probably 13 or 14 years old that I started to make decisions. I am not going to be like my dad in this respect.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I'm not going to follow his way. And that's the part that affects me when I see these children, that those boys are going to be like, yeah, I love my dad, but this dude was reckless. Or this guy, he really, how can he say he respect women and he laying down with this person? I mean, you become very critical of your parents in that age. Mm-hmm. And so that's the part that I'm thinking about as well.
Yeah. And again, what kind of parent will he be? Or as you said, will he be so resentful that he's bringing that into a relationship?
Right.
Maybe taking it out on his partner. So many dynamics that we don't really think about at the moment. The passion, we don't think about that in the heat of the moment,
And so what, for this is such a big conversation, and there's still a lot of unanswered questions. What do we do? How do we start to repair some of the big damages that has been seen? Millions of, I'm sure a lot of people have seen the story. If they haven't all now, they will see the story. Mm-hmm. And I want to, what do we walk away from this story? What are some of the big lessons we need to learn from this, Dr. Holland?
Well, I think, for every situation like that we're reading about, I say put out the positive, put out the one like you and your wife and what you're doing. And yeah, I have a friend who had 8 children, but guess what? They were there. They were supportive. They worked together. They talked about. So I think to put out another example of, we have a lot of children and this is how we're making it work.
Yeah.
That I think, and that's a positive way, right? So we're not saying not to have children, but we're saying to do it responsibly. Think through, do I have the finances? Do I have the millions that's required to give them, a quality of life?
Mm.
She said millions. I don't know if I'll ever.
I did make an error with my number. It was 9 million, but that's still a lot. That's still a lot. That's a whole
9 million. Okay, so it's $272,000 per year per child.
Per child. No, for the life from zero to 18.
And so really, Doc, that it could be more money because you ain't ending your parenthood at 18.
Correct. And then what if children have special needs? We don't know, are any of these children special needs that they need extra something?
Ooh.
We haven't even factored that in.
Lise, that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. It's a whole lot of money. So I think that's something that you do need to think about when you're having all of these children. And I also don't want it to get lost either that I guess when we're talking about 2 parents, it doesn't necessarily have to be man and a woman. It could be just 2 parents.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Correct.
As long as there is and I know that family dynamics has changed greatly in this country, but if you have caring, loving adults in the household
mm-hmm.
who understand the children that they have, whether they're adopted children or biological children or from blended families, creating an atmosphere that is going to encourage the growth and development of a child, then that's what parents are supposed to do, right? That's what we're here for. But I still think that this type of story can get so. I mean, you're probably going to go on, if you were to go on social media, there's going to be conversations about male-female relationships to, money conversation to, what it means to be a father. And I've been a part of all of those discussions in many different ways over the years. And I'm learning that when it comes down to having a child or having a family, that needs to be an intentional decision. That cannot be haphazard, coincidental. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a roll of dice. I hope this person becomes a great dad. Like, I just, you know. I ain't say nothing wrong.
Just playing, and I can't say that I play.
No, because look, I'm tired of hearing stories. Look, I'm tired of hearing stories, horror stories of women and men who chose the wrong person to have their children with.
Mm-hmm.
It's one
and
of the
then
best
you get on
forms of
social
birth
media.
control, I promise you.
Right. Look, let me tell you. Then you get on social media. You get mad. My baby father ain't, and my baby mother ain't, and all of this stuff. And it's like, no, wait a minute. Hold up, man. Hold up. You weren't thinking about that when you saw her in the club that night. You weren't, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? And I get it. Not passion. Doc, you said it. You get in the heat of the moment and all of that. You know what I mean? You're like, oh my God, she the sexiest, or he the finest thing I ever seen. And then you wake up next to this dude. Yeah, I got like 24 other children. Yeah. Now what you gonna do?
You better be away to Walgreens.
And then the crazy part, go right back to him and be like, well, I mean, you here with me. So, I mean, ain't nobody gonna take
At the end of the day, he come home to me.
At the end of the day, he come home to me.
Oh my gosh.
It's just a cycle that keeps going.
Yeah.
That's that Ray Charles thinking. You know, leave the road out there. Don't bring the road home. It's
well,
sad.
I think that someone put in the chat box, Papa was a Rolling Stone. I saw that in the box.
Yeah, Papa was a. I mean, you know,
you're rolling at this point.
I mean, he ain't just rolling.
He's swiftly gliding.
He's doing other things. Doing other things. But I mean, with all due seriousness, this is such a serious situation, Dr. Holland. And I'm really happy that you were able to join us today for this. And I, you know, can you give us at least one resource that you think of, whether it's a book or website, something that you think will help us to make better decisions when it comes to family planning? I'm an advocate of family planning. Some way that we can go as Black people, that we can kind of start feeding on to have a better understanding of the importance of this dynamic.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that Planned Parenthood has a lot of, helpful resources out there that, people can use. And I am happy to do a little bit more research and send it to you.
Yes, ma'am.
You could put it on your website or have something there that people can go to get some very good resources.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Dr. Jacqueline Holland, who serves as the chair of Family and Consumer Sciences at Morgan State University. Dr. Holland, it's always a pleasure. We'll certainly bring you back for other discussions. But thank you so much for your time with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Lisa and Iman, ladies, y'all too much for me. Y'all know that, right? Y'all are too much for me.
Ain't nobody dating nobody with no 33 kids.
That's right.
I wish I thought.
That's a deal breaker.
Hey, look, that's a deal breaker.
Ultimate deal
That would have been a deal breaker after 10.
Hello?
I don't care if you Nick Cannon or not. You'd be like, no, man, no, it's not popping off over here, son. I mean, I really feel sad. I feel, and this is all due seriousness, I'm just concerned about the children. But I think I never forget. There's a Netflix show, folks. Y'all should check it out. It's called Our Father.
I watched that.
It's about the doctor who impregnated all of these women with his sperm, and it ended up where he was doing this for years. And I forgot the city it was in.
Is this based off a true story?
This is based off a true story. The man fathered 99 children. As that they know of.
And counting.
And women are voluntarily accepting this, or is he?
No.
It was in Indiana.
It was in Indiana.
I'll watch.
And it's so fascinating. Here's a doctor. He was a fertility specialist, and instead of using, especially since he did not use, like in a lot of these cases, they came, the woman came to him with their spouse or their mate. He didn't use the mate's sperm. He used his own sperm. Ended up impregnating these women. 99 children and counting came out of this situation. Wow. And here's the thing: this is a white doctor, but the thing is, the emotional, psychological toll that it has played on all of these children. Can you imagine you living in a place and you might be walking, they said it in the documentary, you could have had relations with your brother or your sister, you could have had you may not have known. I mean, all types of scenarios can come out of this situation. Very, very fascinating. And he really never fully apologized for what he did. He thought he was doing something good. Yeah. And that's the sins, that's the mind, the sickness of the mind. And when I read this story about Demond George, it made me think back to that story, Lise, because I was like, that's why I asked the question, do you really think that he understands the seriousness of the situation? And it's look, and somebody asked in the chat, can men have reproductive rights? You damn right we should. We should talk about vasectomies. We need to talk about
vasectomy is much more simpler than a woman getting our tubes tied. So I definitely think men, if y'all want to have a form of birth control, go ahead and get tied up. It can be untied.
Get tied up. And that's it. If you want to do all of that and you don't want that level of responsibility and commitment, then take care of yourself, but don't chance it. Don't play those games. But
doesn't this go full circle though? The respecting of life. How much do we value life? It starts here. Like if you're just haphazardly having children, do you really value life?
Not having 33 of them.
That's a big one. That's a big one. If you are having children that you can't care for, are you truly valuing life? I'm gonna leave that question out there for our watchers and everybody in the chat, folks. If y'all just share your thoughts on that, but otherwise we got to hop off. But Lise, I appreciate you, Lise Winnie, host of Millennials Anonymous podcast. Thank you, Lise. Iman, it's always good to see you, sis. Thank you so much. Glad everything is working out for you, Iman Heath, entrepreneur and activist. Thank you, thank you, thank you, man. Oh man, wow. I wanted to have those conversations, and I'm glad I had it with those two sisters right there. Folks, I hope you enjoyed the show we had for you today. Big conversations, a lot to talk about. We'll certainly be having some much smaller conversations tomorrow, but these were some big ones here that we definitely need to talk about. And again, very, very special thank you to Dr. Jacqueline Holland for her time today. I want to thank my dynamic team, my producers, Joel and Shannon, my engineer, Keenan. Thank you for making it sound and look so good. Folks, make sure you continue to show your support for Black Star Network. You can go directly to our website at blackstarnetwork.com. Support Black Star Network through Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, and Zelle. And if you can't support us financially, that's all right. Let your friends and family know. Download the app for free. And most importantly, continue to spread the word that Black-owned media is here with Black Star Network. Man, oh man. All right, folks, this is my time to go, but I certainly thank you for each and every one of you for being a part of the conversations. Stay tuned at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Of course, it's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Check in with the big brother. If you haven't had a chance, check out Black Star Network to see some of the latest footage that we have from a variety of activities and events that we've been doing that Brother Roland has been covering, from the 2-year anniversary of the killing of George Floyd to other events. Just make sure you check us out at blackstarnetwork.com. All right, but that's going to do it for me. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture here on the Black Star Network. And tomorrow, we got a big announcement coming from South Carolina with the International African American Museum. So you'll be sure, make sure you you check out that announcement tomorrow here on The Culture, only on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon. Peace.